We question our daily position, seeking answers and definitions. Get the queries off your chest with Ahkam SOS.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to Ahkam SOS, the show that discusses Islamic duties and practices. This is a live show where we do take in your questions, so if you have any questions you'd like to ask us, send it via the WhatsApp, send it via the email address, ahkamsos@imamhussein.tv, or alternatively give us a call here in the studio, 0203 515 0199, and inshallah, me and the Sheikh will be more than happy to get your answers and discuss your questions. I'm your host, Mohsin Shah, and joining me is Sheikh Ali Mar. Assalamu alaikum, Sheikhna.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
How are you this evening?
Alhamdulillah, bikhair.
MashaAllah. Sheikhna, let's kick off with a question in regards to ownership of certain items. Now, when it comes to archaeology, for those of you who don't know, is digging up very, very old ruins and artifacts from 2, 3, 4, 5, 1,000 million years old. So sometimes it's dinosaur bones, sometimes it's jewelry belonging to kings and queens and so forth. When it comes to archaeology, and when they find items, is it okay for the archaeologists to claim these items? They normally do it on behalf of a university or a museum or a government or so forth for research. But, would it be theirs? Is it actually, Islamically speaking, is it theirs to own, considering they are the ones who rediscovered these items?
أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين ولعنة الله على أعدائهم أجمعين. If someone finds an antique, for example, let's say silver or gold coins belong to the Vikings, belongs to let's say Ottomans, and this individual finds them, then it will be theirs.
Okay.
No one has the right to come and claim them from them. This individual also has the right to charge a fee for those who wants to come and see and view these found antiques, for example. And the government has no right to seize or to forcefully take these found treasures from this individual. It belongs to him unless he sells them to the National Museum, or the government pays some amount of money and buy these, let's say, golden coins and silvers. Otherwise, it belongs to the one who found them. And this is on the basis of sabaq, or the precedence. The one who proceeds to find these in his, he owns them. Sabaq. We have this qanun and law and the basis in Islam in which if you find something, then it's yours.
I think the law of the land here in the UK is that whoever owns the land that it's found on, it goes to them, it belongs to them because they own the land. So whoever's within that land and containing that land belongs to them as well. I think that's how it's done here in the UK. Sheikhna, second question. What are permissible competitions?
The allowed competitions or musabaqa, as mentioned in Arabic, musabaqa and competition with horses, with motorbikes, with bikes, for example, other types of elephant, let's say elephants for animals, elephants, and so forth. The one can do musabaqa and competition with. They're all allowed. Fencing, for example, archery, and so forth. But with the condition that there's no betting involved in these competitions.
Okay.
You have to make sure that there's no betting, there's no haram transaction involved in these competitions. And of course, there's a price by the governing body, for example, for the one who wins this competition.
So it's like sports, and then you have like tournaments in the sports, which
Exactly.
are, certain people host them, and then the hosts give a prize money to those
Exactly.
who come first, second, and third, and sometimes those who participate. Sheikhna, hypnosis. Now, we've discussed hypnosis before, but using hypnosis on someone without their consent, now, is this permissible or not? But let's look at it through an example. Imagine there's a husband and wife, married couple. The wife wants the husband to stop smoking, and maybe she takes hypnosis tactics. Maybe she plays something while he's sleeping, or without his permission, trying to wheel him off the cigarettes and smoking. So you can see there's some good here that she's trying to do, but obviously hasn't taken consent. Islamically speaking, is this permissible?
Without his consent, it is not permissible. It's not allowed. So you must get the consent of the other side.
Okay. Speaking of consent and permission as well, if a Muslim wants to marry a Kitabi woman, so that's only for the males, isn't it? So a male would like to marry someone from a Christian background or from a Jewish background, but the government doesn't allow it. So what's coming to my mind is most likely it's like somewhere like in the Middle East, like the State of Israel or so forth, where it won't be acceptable and it won't be allowed for a citizen to marry a Muslim man or so forth under their own laws. Do we have to, as Muslim men, do we have to respect the land that we're living in, the law of the land that we're living in, and we have to honor that law? Or do we say, no, according to my religion, it is fine, and I'm going to continue. She wants to marry me, I want to marry her, and we're going to continue. Only, I'm more concerned about what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says than what the government says.
You see, it's not mandatory to follow their rules with this regard, because there's a marriage, a need of marriage, and they want to get married with each other, then they can do the Islamic aqd and the marriage nikah contract, and this going with it, even if it's not allowed on the basis of the legislation of that country, then it should be fine. There's no issue with it, so you don't have to follow. Otherwise, we have to, let's say you're living in a communist country that, let's say, doesn't allow for any religious contracts of marriage. Imagine. So you still have to go on with it, and you have to get married. This is something that your religion is asking for to have it. Otherwise, this relationship would be void and haram and batil. So you have to have this nikah contract implemented. If they want to accept it, then that's another issue.
Excellent. Just a quick reminder to our viewers that this is a live show, so if you have a question you'd like to send it in via the WhatsApp, send it in via the email, or alternatively give us a call here in the studio, and me and the Sheikh will be more than happy to discuss your question. And let's go to the WhatsApp right now. Sheikh, got one in from the WhatsApp. Assalamu alaikum. My question is in regards to Friday prayers. I am a muqallid of Sayyid Sistani. I would like to know, does he recommend me to pray the Friday prayer or to read the Dhuhr prayer? Thank you very much. So the question here from the brother or sister is in regards to Friday. Is it better to read the Jummah prayer or to recite the Dhuhr prayer according to His Eminence the Grand Ayatollah Sayyid Sistani Hafidhullah?
The Sayyid mentions that the Friday prayer with all its necessary conditions, the two sermons and
yes,
the
there's
and
5
so forth.
people present, has
Exactly,
to be there on Friday,
and a distance between the mosques.
3 miles. Yeah.
With all these conditions, it's preferred and more virtuous. So he would encourage Salat al-Jum'ah most than praying Salat al-Dhuhr.
I see.
But there are differences between ulama. Some do not encourage Salat al-Jum'ah. They would say it's allowed.
Yeah.
It's wajib takhyiri. You can choose between Jum'ah and Dhuhr.
Yes.
But they don't really encourage people to pray because, as mentioned, that Salat al-Jum'ah, some would believe that it should be prayed only in the time of the Imam.
Yes.
Infallible Imam Ma'asum alayhi salam, when he's present between people.
I see.
But if he's in disappearance, then of course it becomes not wajib.
Indeed.
Wajib ayn, in other words, that you have to pray it every Friday.
Yes.
So there's a difference between the ulama's opinions.
I mean, we always grew up, when our parents used to take us to Jummah prayers and stuff, they'd always tell us that when the Imam comes, this prayer becomes wajib, you have to attend this prayer, you have to do it. So it was in a way, it was a form of practice. But I understand where you're coming from in regards to the link between the prayer and the Imam of our time. May Allah hasten his rare appearance, inshallah. Sheikhna, what is the Sharia definition of uncultivated, undeveloped lands. In Arabic, I believe it's called Muwat, the lands of Muwat. What is the Islamic definition for that?
The أراضي الموات or undeveloped lands, unowned lands, these are lands which have no owners. Imagine they're just in the middle of the desert, Sahara, for example. Nobody owns this land, this sandy land, for example. In this case, the one who goes and he proceeds and he builds and develops on this land, it becomes his own property. الأرض لله ولمن عمرها. The land is owned by Allah Azza wa Jal, and for the one who builds on it, who develops it, who revives it. So whoever takes this opportunity and revives the land, then it becomes his own land. But it depends on the country. Some countries don't allow it, for example.
Yes.
But this is Islamic law, that the lands are free.
It's really interesting.
Allah's land.
Because if you look at homelessness and poverty, where people cannot afford to purchase land and property, ideally in an Islamic state, all I have to do is technically plant 4 trees in each corner, whatever's in between, that's my land. I can live there, I can set up a tent or something. So I mean, it's a really, really good mechanism, I believe, of helping to, eradicate poverty and to make sure that everyone actually has a place to stay. MashaAllah, inshallah, we pray for that day, inshallah. Shaykhna, the dealings of the sick, are they legitimate?
As far as they're alive, yes, they can actually, before they die, they can actually spend the money on, let's say, their family, their friends, whoever they belong to, and give money to whoever they want, as long as they're alive. But when they die, of course, the money goes to the inheritors. I remember a story that one of the ulama, he went to the hospital, and there was a rich man on his deathbed. So the alim told him that write a will, just part of your money for the cause of Allah, to build the mosques, Husseiniya, Imam Barga, and so forth. Yes. The man said, inshallah, when I return back home, I'll inshallah spend this money.
Okay.
But let me just leave the hospital. The alim said that you're dying. There's no chance of returning. So I have hope in Allah Azza wa Jal that I may return. The next day, the man passed away.
Okay.
And the money was split between his inheritors, and nothing went to the good cause, like the orphanage place, Husseiniya, and so forth. So it's important for the one, as long as he's alive, to spend the excess amount of his money towards Allah Azza wa Jal, for the cause of the goodness, for the humanity, to spread the word of Islam and Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. That's the best thing.
Excellent. Shaykhna, a question in from the email. Assalamu alaikum. My question is in regard to animal meat. If a dead baby is delivered or taken out from the womb of a live animal, is it permissible to consume the meat? I would like the opinion of His Eminence the Grand Ayatollah Sheikh Wahid Khurasani. Shaykhna, a living animal, the womb, the baby inside has died, taking that out, which I don't know whether it's a miscarriage, taken out the conventional way, or if they cut and take the baby out that way. Are we allowed to consume the meat of this animal? The dead animal, not the actual, the mother, the fetus or the baby.
Well, as the question mentions, it's a dead animal, as a mayta. And mayta, a dead corpse, is haram to be consumed. You can't consume a dead animal. You have to slaughter it when he's alive in the halal method. Otherwise, it's haram to consume.
Shaykh, on the topic of dead animals, we get a lot of stuffed animals, and this is tradition, especially here in the West. Some people, they'll keep their pets that have died, and they'll get them. They'll have the insides removed, and then they fill it with cotton wool or rice or whatever. That it all cleaned out and everything. So it will be like a model, or they'll keep the actual animal. Is this science or this skill? First of all, are we allowed to learn such a thing as Muslims? And secondly, are we allowed to partake in this business of selling and buying these artifacts?
Per se, there's basically no forbidden in itself for this act of, as you mentioned, killing the animal and then filling the animal's skin with cotton and so forth. Unless there's a haram in the other side. I don't know what type of haram would be, but
maybe killing animals for that cause. I mean, maybe the animal hasn't, lived its full life yet. If the animal died and you did it, that's one thing. But if you're killing the animal so you could do it, that's totally something else.
Yeah, so the one should be careful in this case. For what cause he wants this animal to be used, for example. Otherwise, it's allowed in overall.
You see that a lot with hunters. They when they catch animals and so forth. Sometimes they have the head of the animals that they've hunted and caught and have them hanging up as a bust. Or sometimes you walk in and there's animal skin on the floor, like a zebra or a lion or a tiger or something that's been stripped. And
again, we have the issue of salah in this place, where you have the picture or of an animal, image of animal, let's say a being which has soul, be it an animal or a human. So praying this in this place, for example, could be makruh, because you have an image or that.
Indeed. And we discussed that the other time in regards to pictures as well.
Pictures, exactly.
Anywhere in the room, makruh to have when you're praying salah. Excellent. We're going to a short break now, inshallah. Join us after the break as we continue discussing different Islamic practices. Join us after the break. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh. Welcome back to Ahkam SOS as we continue to discuss different Islamic duties and practices with myself, Mohsin Shah, and Sheikh Ali Mar. Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh.
Assalamu alaikum.
Just a quick reminder to all our viewers that this is a live show, and if you have any questions you'd like to ask, please send them in via the WhatsApp. You can alternatively email us or give us a call 0203 515 0199, and inshallah, me and the Sheikh will be more than happy to discuss and answer your questions. Sheikh, now, we were talking about the animals and so forth, and we were talking about also pictures and so forth. We have many different questions. The next question is in regards to something I've experienced myself, and a lot of other brothers and sisters may have experienced, and that's physiotherapy. Now, whenever we have an injury, and a serious injury, we need physiotherapy to help repair the damage as well as to strengthen the area that's become weak. If an individual requires physiotherapy, and let's say this is for the knee, they need physiotherapy for the knee. Let's say it's a male, but there's if it's even a female, but there's an opposite gender physiotherapist, and sometimes they need to touch the area. Islamically speaking, what are we supposed to do? Is it okay because they're a professional? We need this physiotherapy in order to get better. Is there anything else we can do? Should we request for a same gender therapist? Is it okay just to wear gloves if the therapist wears gloves and does it and so forth? Islamically speaking, what's the taklif upon us?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In this regard, the one should seek for the same gender therapist and doctor. You're not allowed to be treated by the opposite gender, be it a male or female. You must make sure that you ask for the same gender doctor for the treatment, especially when there is skin-to-skin touch. So the one should ask initially for the same gender doctor. If the doctor was more expert and there were no alternative to this doctor, let's say she's a female patient and the doctor is a male, and this doctor was the best in that city, in that country.
Or maybe it's the only one available at the time.
Whatever is the reason, but it has to be a justified reason for that, then she can refer back to this doctor. Otherwise, if there are similar doctors from the same gender, like females, then she's not allowed to see the male doctor.
Okay.
So there are exceptions with this regard.
That's it. Moving back towards the scholars, Shaykhna. Now, scholars are regarded as experts. However, the majority of them are experts in Islamic jurisprudence and not in other sciences. You and I both know that actually, yes, they are. A lot of our maraja and all of our scholars are experts in multiple disciplines as well as jurisprudence. But for this argument, for this question, let's say it's just jurisprudence. Are we allowed to take, like, economic advice from such a scholar, especially when we have economists and so forth, who arguably are more knowledgeable than them when it comes to economy?
Well, you see, our ulama and fuqaha do not just study the tahara and najasa and purity and salah and hajj and just worships. If you read the books of the Risala Amaliyah by the ulama, you'll see that it mentions the acts of worship and transactions.
Yes.
Means the other part of the Risala Amaliyah is transactions. And imagine almost 1/4 of the ahkam is based on the transactions, economics basically. We have Kitabul Tijara, the book of trade, of commerce. Kitabul Bay', the book of sale, of selling, for example. Rehan, lease, Kitabul, rent, and so forth. These are all based on the economics, basically. So our ulama spent at least 30 to 50 years in deep study of these ahkam. And by looking at the current situations and the new questions which can come up, for example, selling by the internet,
Yes.
Buying a house with mortgage, paying interest,
Yes.
they all have studied and gave fatwa based on their study and extraction of the ahkam from the sources, i.e. the Quran and the Hadith. So our ulama are also one of the best referrers that one can refer back to and ask for advice for the purpose of religious and Islamic law. Otherwise, who do we follow? Shall we follow the non-Muslims in this regard and take and give interest, for example, to anyone we see? So we have to go back to our ulama, because the Imams of Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam spoke about these ahkam.
Yes.
There are dozens and dozens of hadith with this regard. In buying and selling, in guarantee, in warranty is all mentioned.
Yes. Yeah.
The ahkam of the warranty and the guarantee mentioned clearly in the books of the fiqh.
So I remember when we studied Tafsir al-Muta'allimin with the sharh of Sayyid Sadiq Shirazi, who's behind you. We studied contracts, and there's 7 ways to cancel a contract according to Islam and so forth, such as if you walk away from the business deal, from the table, if you cancel later on, if you don't shake hands and so forth. There's a lot that goes into it, but there's 7 main ways to cancel the contract. It's very interesting as well. Inshallah, we'll get to do a show on it. Shaykhna, a question that's coming via the email from a sister asking, according to His Eminence Sayyid Sistani Hafidhullah, are females allowed to visit the graveyard?
There is no objection in it. However, they have to make sure that they observe hijab fully, because in some countries, sadly, in some Muslim countries, that they come to the graveyard, some women of course, not all of them, they come with full makeup and light hijab in the graveyards. In the graveyards, we're supposed to learn and lesson from those who passed away. So some would lack in terms of the hijab, maybe from the men's side as well, who look at those non-mahram women. So from both sides, they have to respect the haram and the forbidden acts as mentioned in the books of Risala Amaliyah. So per se it's allowed, but to avoid the haram acts, even in the graveyards.
Awesome. It's quite funny actually, like it's a graveyard that everyone's dead. There's no one going to be there. But Hassan, thank you, Sheikh. Sheikhna, some jobs require us to shave our beards fully. I know in the restaurant industry they prefer people not to have beards so that the hair doesn't fall into the food and so forth. As Muslims, shaving the beard is forbidden, it's haram. Are we allowed to apply for those jobs? And if we get those jobs, are we allowed then to shave our beards?
No, it is not permissible. Shaving the beard is haram, is not allowed in Islam. And I think this is also agreed upon by the other Muslim sects as well. Ahlul Sunnah. So we are not allowed to shave our beards at all, except if somebody is compelled in a serious situation, that if he doesn't shave, he will lose his job and he will have no source of income, for example. He'll be homeless, for example. It's a shari'i serious matter in which he has no choice. In this case, he's allowed, but with the necessary, so to the extent that is needed. So if he can avoid clean shave, so he can leave a bit of, let's say, 0.5.
Okay, shorten the bit.
Very short, yeah. So he's not allowed to do clean shave, for example.
Okay.
So to the minimum required.
Okay, so shorten
for the
beard.
compelled.
Ah,
For the
okay,
compelled.
For the compelled,
Exactly.
shorten the beard as much
Yeah.
as possible, which is really stubbly, isn't it? It's just
Yeah.
long stubble.
Yeah.
But
But
blade
originally
to the skin.
it's forbidden. Originally, you're not allowed to apply for the jobs that asks for shaving your beard, or if you work, you have to leave the work and find somewhere else. But for the one who is compelled, he has no option, he's a poor individual, he'll be in hardship, in difficulty, then exception comes to this individual with, as I've said, with the extent necessary of minimum, to keep at least the minimum.
I see. Excellent. Sheikhna, when giving a loan to someone, instead of charging interest, can I ask for additional favors or additional work? So I'll say, okay, I'll give you, let's say you want a loan of £1,000, and I'll say to you, Sheikh, oh, no problem, I'll give you £1,000, but in return, I want my £1,000 back, and I want you to teach my son Quran for 3 months. Is this acceptable? Is this, Islamically speaking, to add on to the loan, not an interest, but maybe a favor or maybe a task? Maybe, come and paint my house. If you want this loan, I'll give you the loan, and then you have to come and paint my house, or so forth. Is this acceptable? Is this allowed?
This would be known as usury or riba. It's not allowed. Allah Azza wa Jalla states in the Holy Quran in Surah number 2, Ayah 275, He says, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, الذين يأكلون الربا لا يقومون إلا كما يقوم الذي يتخبطه الشيطان من المس. Those who swallow usury or riba will not rise except as someone driven mad by Satan's touch. So it is a satanic act, a shaitanic act for the one who receives riba and he eats riba. In other words, as the Quran says, يأكل, eating riba.
Yes.
It's totally forbidden. That's why Islam tries to prevent from this act so that poverty won't spread in the society. Because one of the causes of poverty is the high interest rates.
Yes, indeed. Thanks to the banks.
Exactly. So we have also a hadith from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam that Imam Ali states the Holy Prophet, he cursed or he did la'na on the one on the act of riba. لعن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم الربا وآكله, the one who eats the riba, who takes the riba, وبايعه, the one who sells the riba, ومشتريه, the ones who buys the riba, وكاتبه, the one who writes the riba. You see, all these are cursed by the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم. وشاهديه أو شاهديه, the one who witnesses the riba and affirms it. So imagine how riba is being rejected in Islam to avoid corruption, to avoid poverty, to avoid the credit crunch,
Yes.
which happened in 2008.
Yeah, and looks like we're going to go through another one soon
Exactly.
as well. Oh, excellent. Sheikhna, staying on the topic of interest, we've got an email here from someone from the US saying that some of the Muslims in the US take out interest-bearing loans from the bank when they want to either buy a home or a car, and they make monthly payments with interest. Do their needs for a home and a car constitute compulsion, given that it is possible for them to rent for the duration of their lives? So, I mean, do they have to get a loan for a mortgage or a loan for a car where they have to pay interest every month? When, alternatively, you could just rent every month and there's no interest involved at all.
Well, according to the norms and the urf, if there is a discomfort and difficulty, imagine that if this individual, if he goes and he rents a house or a flat, then he'll end up borrowing money to live. But if he buys a house, things will be different. So he'll be in trouble if he rents a house for any reason. But buying a house would make his life better and easier. If there's a discomfort and difficulty on this case, then he's allowed to have this transaction and to pay this interest, because there's a compulsion. He's compelled, this individual. He has no choice. I can't buy a car except with paying in installments, and there's a charge on it, interest. I have no choice. I can't pay one-off payment of, let's say, £3,000 to buy a car. I have to break it down into monthly installments. There's no other options. So in such situation is allowed. Otherwise, if you can't pay, then you have to pay, the whole amount and avoid paying interest.
I see. Interesting. Shaykhna, our scholars and our ulama, they say that it is permissible to perform salah, worship, in the worship places of Ahl Kitab, so a church or a synagogue and so forth, and to spray water in the area that you're going to pray. What is the significance of spraying this water, considering that if we're doing it because we want to make the place tahir, then spraying that water won't make it any more tahir than it is. And if it's najasa there, then spraying that water is just going to increase the najasa. It's not really going to remove the najasa. So what is the significance behind spraying of this water?
If there's no sign of najasa, then you can pray, in any worship place, for example, even in the streets, in the corners of the car parks, for example, pavements. It's tahir. There's no sign of najasa. But for this purpose, it seems to be that it's just to make it more cleaner, in other words, because they don't usually wash the floor as we do. So maybe
I don't know. We don't really
Allah
know,
knows
because I've never been to a church, I have been to a church, but I've never been to a synagogue and so forth. I've never seen them clean it neither. So who knows? We can't really say that. Yeah, they don't clean or they do. But yeah, spraying water, I guess, just makes that a little bit more clean, I guess, personally. Shaykh, a final question for this evening coming from the WhatsApp, and that is, this table's making so much noise. If while performing a salah one doubts whether or not he has performed wudu, would his salah be valid?
If one's is in doubt that if he performed the wudu, and let's say he was praying, then his salah will be void and batil. He needs to redo his wudu and then pray again to fulfill this obligatory act, because he doesn't know if he had performed the wudu. So this doubt destroys the previous state of purity and wudu. So he needs to redo the wudu and the salah as well.
Ahsan. Not to be confused with the ruling of if you have performed wudu and you doubt that you've broken it, which is a separate ruling where you continue performing the prayer. I think you're wudu. That's more to do with doubt rather than not performing the wudu itself. Thank you very much, Shaykhna, for all your time and for your research, and thank you to all the viewers for joining us. Inshallah, me and the Shaykh will be back on Wednesday, 6:30 here on Imam Hussein TV 3 for another episode of Ahkam SOS. If you have any questions you'd like to send it in via the WhatsApp, send it via the email, or alternatively give us a call here in the studio, and we will do our best to answer all of your questions. See you on Wednesday, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh.
We question our daily position, seeking answers and definitions. Gather queries of your chest with Ahkam SOS.